Welcome, guys. We've had the Hungarian Grand Prix, and that race had championship implications, strategy swings, penalties, and heartbreaks. Let's review it. Welcome, guys. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like. We'll start with the big story of the race. Lando Norris returns his first win as champion, and he brings McLaren back to the top. What a weekend from him. They came out of nowhere. FP3, suddenly the McLaren sprung a surprise on the Ferraris, who looked fastest on Friday. Pole position on Saturday, and well, but for a mistake at turn 2, it was a pretty flawless drive to victory in the end. He takes his teammate, helped obviously by some backmarker problems for Oscar, but you need a little bit of luck. But after that, he was dominant. Once he got ahead, he's shown the pace that he had. He was saying in the first stint when he was stuck behind Oscar that actually, I'm faster than Oscar here, but the dirty air isn't helping. I'm not able to just get the move done down the straight. And well, McLaren, are they back now in this championship fight? Potentially anything can change. There's a long 11 races to go, but it's almost a race that's should have been a McLaren 1-2. It turns out there's a little bit of disappointment on their side as well. Is it too late of a title charge? A hell of a lot of work done. The upgrades have worked now for McLaren, and will we see this revolution that we see from them? We've seen it in previous seasons. They've got history of doing it, that once they get in that momentum, they can just be flawless from there onwards. But the first win for McLaren of the year, they now join Ferrari and Mercedes to take wins this season. And it's come at almost the right time for them, hasn't it? A strong boost heading into the summer break. That it's almost that goal before half time, isn't it? Where everybody else is looking happy. Mercedes, Ferrari, going into the break thinking, yeah, we can kick on from here, first and second, and now they're going to have to be looking over their shoulders with what McLaren can do, because they head to the Dutch Grand Prix next, and if McLaren carry on this sort of form, who bet against them to go on a run of winning a couple of Grand Prix? They've shown race pace before. We've seen that in Spa, in just parts of Grand Prix, in Silverstone as well. Lando Norris being really, really quick. Today it was Oscar, got a brilliant start, got in from third to first at the end of turn 2, and it looked like a strong McLaren 1-2. They had strong race pace. They weren't under threat from behind. I think they were helped with Max Verstappen, who we'll get onto as well. But it's overall come together really, really well at the right time for McLaren. And the question is now, is this just a one-off, or will they kick on from here? And we've seen a couple of false dawns, probably from Red Bull in Austria. Ferrari have been thereabouts. We've bigged them up. This weekend wasn't great for them, so we'll get on to them as well. But for Lando Norris, finally a win in 2026. The way they started this campaign, it looked like he might be one of the champions that go the next season without a win. Is it too much of a stretch for him to be in a fight to retain this championship of his? I'm going to say yes, because it's not going to be like other championships. And we've got a strong Ferrari. We've got a really strong Mercedes. And if we've got Max Verstappen in the mix, and we see them taking the three behind, sort of taking points of each other, and Mercedes win it. Like what we've seen with Red Bull a couple of seasons ago, wasn't it? Where Red Bull were out in front, everybody was then catching, but they were fighting each other. It wasn't just one team taking the fight to Red Bull. It was one weekend it was a Ferrari, one weekend it was a McLaren, and so on and so forth. And we're getting a little bit of that pattern now. It was generally Ferrari, Mercedes. We then seen Red Bull and Max Verstappen step up with taking a couple of podium positions, and now McLaren. And that could be the thing that I've said before, could save Mercedes. But for Lando Norris, this was an absolutely brilliant weekend. A brilliant drive from him. A well-deserved victory. Won by 15 seconds in the end. Just showed he had the pace to beat his teammate, which we'll get onto the heartbreak for Oscar Piastri. The retirement from was third place. I think he was closing down Max Verstappen, if my memory serves me right. But he took the lead early on, and then just got shafted with the back markers fighting between themselves. The FIA saying there was an issue with the blue flags, but that was only towards the end of the race, and that was what hindered Kimi Antonelli and Lewis Hamilton's charge of closing Max Verstappen. But there was 2 or 3 blue flags for Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso, who were battling each other. Carlos colliding with Oscar. The penalty was, or the incident was under investigation. We didn't get the end of the investigation. Race finished. I've still not heard anything at the time of recording this video. So we'll see what comes of that, if anything. But he looked really competitive, drove strongly, had everything under control. I think, but for the incident with Carlos Sainz, he would have come out ahead of Lando Norris, and he would have had the pace to keep Norris back. Norris was struggling in the early parts of the race to get close to Oscar. There was only one overtaking zone, and that was down into turn 1. And with the same machinery as his teammate, I think he would have had enough to keep him back. And then he got the mechanical failure at the end of the race. When he was fighting with Lewis and Max. But it looked like a P2 was on for him. But with 15 laps to go, a gearbox issue. He wasn't sure where that came from. The teams were initially thinking it might have been the way he was driving the curbs. But he was saying at the end of the race that he drove his normal racing lines when the gearbox went. And that's another DNF problem for Mercedes. They've had a few of these now, and a little bit like McLaren. It's the fragility of this car that's costing them, and that's a huge loss for Oscar. The bad luck's just not really been for him. He was on for a race win in Japan, and the VSC cost him the win there. On for a race win here in an incident with a back marker, which just should never happen. I think cost him a chance at victory, and then the podium went with the DNF. So real kick in the teeth for him. Not great from McLaren. There's also murmurs of Oscar sort of on the radio saying, you're not really factored in this strategy call, have you, me having to pass through back markers, and that didn't go well for him at all. And I think that's Oscar he played that down in the end, but them little doubts, we've seen them in previous years. They're not good for McLaren. Also, and they've also lost a huge haul of championship points in the Constructors, McLaren. So, yeah, they'll be disappointed. Oscar will be disappointed. He needs to get a good run once the summer break is done. It comes at probably a good time for Oscar. He just needs to sit down, work on his craft, understanding these cars, and come back stronger next time out. Next up, Max Verstappen. And, on for driver of the day. It could be many people's driver of the day, because that was an absolutely brilliant drive. Did really well to hold back a fast Lewis Hamilton. They then lost out under strategy to Lewis, but then the one chance he got where Lewis was passing Liam Lawson and he got a sniff, got a dive bomb, and an absolutely perfect move on Lewis Hamilton. There's no two ways about that. Crucial for him in his race to recapture that position back on Lewis. And I think it was that then sprungboard him on to at least a podium finish, helped with Oscar Piastri's DNF, because he was hunting them down, wasn't he, with the softer tyres. Bold move to do 28 laps on the softs, but he made it work, had good race pace, good degradation on them, and it was surprising that they went to go on that soft tyre to go so long. but it worked, and I think Max made it work. He was getting deg on the mediums, so to do that many laps on the softs was absolutely brilliant from him. And it wasn't that he just did the laps; he was fast, consistent, and absolutely brilliant from him. And to finish second with the pass of the day, and really that car wasn't there, especially early doors. The Ferraris of Lewis Hamilton looked faster than him, but the crucial move and then management with the tyres to the end with good race pace was absolutely phenomenal. And Max just pulled everything out of that Red Bull here this weekend. On to Kimi Antonelli next up. He extends his lead in the championship, and he's my driver of the day because he's come from P7 to P3, another podium, a huge haul of points. Crucial that he got ahead of Lewis Hamilton under the VSC line because he was on fresh hards. Ferrari was on fresh softs, and he thinks had Lewis just kept ahead of him, that he thinks a P3 would have been difficult, but he would have got that inevitably in the end because Lewis did get a penalty, which we'll get to as well, for speeding in the pit lane. But Kimi Antonelli, you wouldn't have thought he'd increase his championship lead to everybody this weekend after his P7. He had his teammate ahead of him, George Russell, will get to him as well. A shockingly bad start. But Kimi Antonelli extends his lead now to 50 points in the championship. Is it becoming inevitable now that it's Kimi's championship? I don't think so, but he doesn't always dominate the weekends, but he just doesn't seem to have a bad one, or he turns it around. The penalty for qualifying, I think, was really, really harsh. But he did the job, and I think had he not got that penalty, I think he was on for the race win again. It was this pace that he had, a little bit like what we saw from Lando Norris on the old times, on the old tyres, was really, really strong, and that's what got him in the hunt right at the end. He nearly lost out because everybody ahead of him who was on the really old tyres and he was on the fresher hards towards the end, then got the cheap pit stop under the VSC, and that nearly, thwarted him, but he comes back. I think but for that, he potentially could have got Max Verstappen for P2, but obviously we'll never know about that. And then he was really costly with the back markers really holding him up. Nico Hulkenberg and the two Racing Bulls, yes, the three of them were in a fight for points. But I think this is where the FIA failure of the blue flag system came in, because Kimi was stuck behind them for an absolute age. He lost about 3 seconds to Max Verstappen, at least in that part, if not more. Because he was gaining on Max, had the better tyres, but just got held up. So, and best part of nearly 4 seconds that Kimi lost to Max Verstappen, and he finished just 3 behind him in the end. So he lost him the chance of a fight with Max. Not to say he would have passed him. Max was brilliant coming out the final corner and defending down into turn 1. But we never got to see that fight, and I think that's the shame, really. But for Kimi, what a drive from P7 to P3. Really, really strong performance again. Not the victory, but a podium, damage limitation, and he extends his lead in the championship. That's absolutely brilliant from him. Next up, Lewis Hamilton, and his race and weekend really unravelled, didn't it? He got second, just missed out on pole position by 12 thousandths. Strategy call for going first in qualifying. Probably cost him that pole position because his second run in qualifying wasn't great, so he missed out on pole there. And that seems to just kind of carried on with Ferrari throughout the race. Strategy calls just didn't fall right for him. Told out like critical, got passed by Max Verstappen, sloppy, and then I think that was, I just expected a little bit more and a bit better. The race pace from Lewis and Ferrari was really disappointing. He then gets a penalty for speeding in the pit lane. I've watched it back, and it looked like he presses the pit lane speed limiter button before the line, and then at the line. So if he does speed in the pit lane, it's going to be very marginal. We might see an overturning like we did in Monaco. The only difference here is it's only Lewis that got the penalty, whereas multiple drivers that got the penalty in Monaco. Not expecting it to happen. It's possible. Will Ferrari appeal it? He lost a position only to his teammate as a result of that. He finished fourth, but will fifth and lost fourth to Charles Leclerc. And I think instead of celebrating a strong recovery after the grid penalty on Saturday with potentially a podium, Ferrari leave Hungary just asking questions of where the race pace has gone and more sort of backroom mistakes that are costing them. We've seen that in qualifying, key or odd questions to answer in the race. The pit lane mistake, was it avoidable? And these point losses now could come back to haunt them if they get their car right in the second half of the season, and if they can take the fight to Mercedes, because they're giving Mercedes and Kimi Antonelli this buffer now. This was meant to be their weekend, and they've been thwarted by the McLarens, but they've also been beaten by a Red Bull and a Mercedes as well. So on race base, they've just come out sort of fourth best when it comes to that. Charles Leclerc, he'll be leaving, again, disappointed. Ferrari will leave Hungary frustrated because they've had what looked like the best car come Friday morning, but they've just not been able to carry that on throughout the weekend. The penalty, Charles Leclerc inherited fourth place, but he had no pace really. And yeah, they're still lacking pace to beat the Mercedes and McLaren come race day, and that's something that they need to work on. Ferrari were competitive, or they start competitive, but then fall off. And it's just not been convincing for them. So something to, work on for them. George Russell on the recovery drive. You've got to say, what a drive in the end. His race pace was comparable to the leaders, but it's almost like the race where he's kind of had that pace and not been bettered by Kimi Antonelli. It's just, it was the anti-stall that kicked in. Toto Wolff saying that is completely Mercedes' fault, not Russell's. There was some sort of issue. The engine just sort of increased power and then dropped power at the start all on its own, even though the throttle input from George was exactly the same at the start. So it's completely a Mercedes problem, and why he got anti-stall and dropped to the back of the grid. And so to finish from 19th to 17th or 7th in the end, was that damage limitation? Absolutely yes, but it's another costly weekend comparing it to Kimi Antonelli. He started 6th ahead of him, expected fireworks around this circuit between the pair of them. And we never really got it. He had good race pace. He made his way through the back markers pretty well. But yeah, just another weekend where it's not gone well for him. And we kind of need that George Russell to step up now in this championship. If it carries on like this, Kimi Antonelli is going to walk it. And George needs to just understand what he's doing wrong to not get the one lap pace out of it and ultimately the race pace out of it. But yeah, disappointing, you've got to say, in the end, despite a really good recovery of where he finished. So it's almost sort of a really sour point, but some positives as well for him to take into the break. Onto the race. Well, it was all about strategy, really, that won this race. Once again, it was clear air and outright pace that won this. There weren't many overtakes at the front, and it was just a one brilliant move from Max on Lewis. Instead, it was decided by tyre management, pit stop timing and undercuts, and just avoiding the traffic. The traffic really was what cost Kimi Antonelli, and it cost Oscar Piastri as well. And I think, but for them issues, we might have seen a different race winner and someone different on the podium. But it wasn't to be. Tyre management and just eking the laps out was crucial again in this race. And a little bit of luck, and it went the way of Lando Norris. Max Verstappen I've got to say, almost created his own look a little bit, because his drive was brilliant. He didn't pit under the virtual safety car, and to manage 28 laps soft to the end and not get passed by Kimi Antonelli and be a sitting duck at the end was, I just think, such a brilliant drive. Why everybody looked for Max Verstappen. And that was really the stories of the race. The championship picture heading into the summer break. Well, can Lando Norris now build on this momentum? Can we get a 3-horse fight for the championship? I think it's a long way to go for Kimi Antonelli. For Lando Norris. They've almost left themselves a lot to do with 11 races to go, and they're not going to be the only teams bringing upgrades now. Nobody's resting on their laurels working for 27 car. Every bit of upgrade and every bit of finding this season will help next season. So everybody's still going to be developing all the way pretty much until the final races. Kimi Antonelli, is he now favourite for the championship? Still a long way to go with a whole 11 Grand Prix. It's only 50 points. It was up to 60 plus points, wasn't it? At one point to George Russell. If you look at that picture, he's still 14 points down from where he was. It can change very quickly. He had 2 DNFs early doors, 2 more of them, and everybody else is right in there in the mix. Has Max Verstappen kept himself alive in this championship? I don't think so, because we've not seen at any point the Red Bull be the fastest car on the circuit. McLaren have beaten them to a race win. I didn't think that would happen after Austria. I thought Red Bull would work and move on to bigger and better things and probably pick up that first win before McLaren, but McLaren have beaten them to it. So probably another kicker for Verstappen and Red Bull. They've got an awful lot of work to do. The car is just not working. We've seen Max absolutely maximize everything, but the Red Bull need upgrades. They need him to work, and they need to try and convince Max to stay. The Ferrari's title challenge, is it fading? This is a really hard one to judge, because they've had 3 Grand Prix where they shouldn't have done well, but they did in Silverstone with Charles Leclerc's win, perform well in Spa. This weekend was the big weekend for them. This is one where we thought, if they win this, they'll be strong, not title favourites, but there'll be a strong battle between Ferrari and Mercedes, and Mercedes would then be really looking over their shoulder. But if the fact is that McLaren outshone them this weekend, and so Ferrari are going to go away with lots of work to do. It's no longer them taking the fight to Mercedes. They're getting pipped by Max Verstappen. They're getting beaten by now Lando Norris. So more issues for them to overcome in this championship battle. And can Mercedes respond after losing their run of dominance? They've not been top step. Kimi Antonelli was last time out. But aside from that, it's not been an easy run. Even the last race, Kimi didn't run away with it in Spa, where we kind of expected that to happen. And this weekend, they didn't look like the top runners at any point in the weekend. They weren't top of any session. So the first time that's happened all season. And so they go away with, again, lots of work to do. They know they can't rest on their laurels. Championship has got 11 races to go now, 12. Potentially could be less, but there's at least 12 Grand Prix as things stand if we still go to Qatar and Abu Dhabi, because we have the Malaysian Grand Prix confirmed for the October the 4th, which I'm so glad that we are going there. So that's another Grand Prix that we will be going to, the Sepang circuit. It should be really, really interesting. So lots to look forward to in the summer break or after the summer break. But yeah, there we have it. That is the review of the Hungarian Grand Prix, the final race before the summer break. There will be more content coming from me throughout the break. We'll do a mid-season review. We'll look ahead to what's to come as well. We've got the driver ratings coming from Hungary as well in a couple of days' time, so watch out for that. But yeah, Hungary done. McLaren have finally won a race. Somehow it's come in Hungary, where Ferrari were meant to be the favourites. Norris ends his drought. He wins a race as champion. Well deserved. Kimi Antonelli takes another step towards his championship goal. Max Verstappen is proving again why he's an absolute beast. And well, we could see an entirely different championship picture in 11 races or 12 races time. But thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, see you on the next one.